This is the Above Average Podcast, and you are listening because you want an above average life. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Above Average Podcast, the podcast where we talk to above average people about their above average lives. Now, my guest today is a master of the charismatic arts. Having been a sales trainer for over 2 decades, he's met every type of personality, and he's here with us today to discuss how to understand yourself and others better, become an elite level communicator, and how to be comfortable in social environments. Please welcome Mr. J.P. Addison to the show. How are you, mate?
Hello, I'm good.
Yeah, I love the little wave to the camera. No one ever waves to the cameras anymore. Everyone's just like straight in the conversation. I love it. So, mate, before we get into the psychology and personality stuff that you are known for, I'm curious, what first attracted you to the sales world and why stick with it for so long as a career?
Not gonna lie, it was the money. It was literally the money. Yeah. I don't think anybody ever goes to school and goes, you know what? I really want to be a salesman when I come out of school.
Yeah.
My first job, I was working in a call centre. I thoroughly loved it. Ended up being a team leader, and I was doing all right for my age and what I was looking to try and achieve. Yeah. And I used to play rugby, and one of the lads was in there, kind of similar age, maybe a year or two older than us. And he was keep telling us about all this exotic stuff that he was doing and all the places he was going and all the money that he was making.
Yeah.
And he was like, all right, so what is it you do? I was like, well, I work in sales. And of course, working in a call centre, talking to people all day long. Well, if that's what sales is, I can do that. That's not a problem. So I left my cushy job working in a call centre, and I became a salesperson.
Nice.
And I was shit.
What was it selling?
My first ever sales job, I was working for Rent-A-Kill.
All right, okay.
And it was working, like, selling stuff that goes into toilets. So I was the toilet paper and condom man.
The toilet paper and condom man?
Yeah. So
nice.
that was my first foray into...
I wish I'd had that information before, and I could have put that in the introduction. Please welcome the condom man to the show. Love it.
Yeah. So that was my first... foray into selling. And it was literally sitting in a room by myself, phoning people going... Do you want some toilet paper? Do you want some Tampax?
Like cold calls?
No, a lot of them were existing clients or people who'd bought before. But it was soul destroying, kind of sitting in a room by yourself, but for weeks on end, just trying to flog stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot of mental energy.
Well, it was, but I didn't have any training. I was literally, can you talk on the phone? Yes. Right, well, this is what we do. Get on the phones and start flogging it. And I didn't know what I was doing. I literally had no idea what I was supposed to do, how I was supposed to structure a conversation. It was just because I was okay and confident enough to speak to people. But, I was clueless.
Yeah.
And again, not to give myself any hardship, it was 25 years ago. And I was brand new, and a lot of people are brand new at something, and you've got to learn. And actually, I think part of my personality is I never quit, even though I wasn't very good. I was like, I need to get better at this, and that kind of, I think a lot of people may have quit and went, actually, this is not for me.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was like, I was money hungry, and I was like, well, I need to get good at this, because if I want to change my life and I want to do something that makes a difference, I've got to earn money.
Yeah.
So I stuck with it, and obviously 20-odd years later, I'm still kind of in it.
You didn't sell Rent-A-Kill and condoms for 20 years, though, did you?
No.
I was like, mate, that sounds a little
bit... Again, we'll kind of explore this later in terms of the psychology. I'm an extrovert. I need to be around people.
Yeah.
So being in a room by myself all day, even though to talk on the phone, it was very lonely for me. So I needed something where I was out in front of people. So I did that job for about 4 months. Then I left, and I managed to get myself a commission-only job, which was selling door-to-door telephone lines.
Oof.
So going from sitting in a room being comfortable on the phone,
Yeah.
because I was comfortable on the phone, to actually walking the streets, knocking on people's doors, trying to sell them telephone lines, it was a different beast altogether.
I mean, that is a hard job for anyone that's never done. I mean, I've never done it, but I had a friend who was like trying to get me into it for ages, and I was like, "How?" He was selling windows, and I was like, "Mate, how do you deal with like so many no's and so much like not interested, door slam in the face, fuck offs, and all that stuff?" Like,
I think my mentality was very much a case of, well, I don't need to earn the money now. I'm in my 20s, but I need to learn something. I need to learn a skill, which is actually going to help us, have a nicer life later on. And sales is something that most people need to learn. Certainly if they're going to be an entrepreneur or they're going to work for themselves, you need to have that sales skills. You've just got to. So it was realisation that I had to do the hard yards to learn, and it was hard yards. And again, I sucked at that job because it was a case of there's nothing for the business to lose, because if you sell something, they'll pay you. If you don't sell anything, they don't pay you any wages.
Yeah. Which is supposed to be an incentive to sell more.
Sell more. But it was so you could be working for them for 10 years and be crap. It's okay because I haven't actually paid you any money apart from the thing that they've sold. So I lasted doing that for another period of time, and I suppose my saviour, and I'll never forget the guy, called Stuart, and I started working. I kind of like, I've done a bit of sales, but I'm still not where I need to be. I need to go back into what I'm comfortable with, so I need to go into a call centre, but that does sales. So I was very fortunate at the time to get a job for TeleWest, and this is obviously going way back, which is now morphed into Virgin Media. And that was the first time I'd actually had some sales training, where somebody sat us down and went, "This is what you need to do, mate." And that was the start of my sales career. Even though I'd probably been fiddling about with it for 9 months to a year, that was the start when I actually started to sell. And it was helpful that I had a base wage coming as well, so I was comfortable.
Nice.
And I was okay. I was okay at it, but like most call centres and things like that, you have an induction, so they give me the basics of how to sell. And I was all right. And because I was a hard worker and I was a bit of a grafter, I turned up, I did what I had to do, and kind of leads into the next point, really. Because I was there a year and I was doing okay, they put me forward for this advanced selling course.
Nice.
And that's when I was introduced to the different personality types.
Right, okay.
And how each individual thinks and behaves differently, and they need different things. And that really blew my head off, because I was like, this is something that is so useful, and then explains a lot about people that I know. And like a lot of things, if you don't use it, you lose it. And I was determined to make this part of what I was doing. So the story I always tell with this is, out of 200 salespeople, I was kind of around about 80 out of the 200, so I was all right. After I started to put some of this stuff into play, I went from that 80 to the top 3 within 2 months.
Wow.
And I stayed at the top 2 sales per people for about 18 months. And I was doing really well. I was making decent money. And it started to become a bit of a game, because it was like, I understand people and I can connect with them at their level, which means that I'm having better conversations. People want to buy from us. And it wasn't the hardest sale in the world, I'm not going to lie, because it was inbound. But again, that kind of tenacity, the hard work, as well as the understanding and the structure, it really was dynamite in terms of my sales performance, which then kind of tripped us over, which is, you're doing so well, can you train other people to do it?
The more you do, the better, the more responsibilities they're going to give you, aren't they?
It was, and that was the thing, really. And although I enjoyed making the money and I was comfortable and competent at what I was doing, I started training, and I just fell in love with training and helping people. And that's kind of where I've stuck in that space for well, 25 years in total, if you kind of look at it.
No one knew, like, I mean, we've met a couple of times. We met at the Facebook Ads Day originally. I thought, have we done 2 of them together now?
Just the one.
I swear it's been 2. I swear I was like, oh, hello again.
It might have been.
Yeah. And obviously I saw you at Sam Gibson's event. But one of the things that I like about you is you, like, if I was to meet you and you said I work in sales, I would not assume you're a typical salesperson, because the typical salesperson, for most people, think is this really sleazy, caricature of, like, like if someone says, oh, I work in car sales, they're like, oh, sleazy salesman kind of vibe. So, but that's because a lot of the time they use like an unethical sort of way of selling, really. So what difference is a genuine salesperson versus this stereotypical sleazy salesperson?
Don't get us wrong, I've been there. I've been that sleazy salesperson.
Yeah.
And I think it's like a level of maturity. You go and jump on the bandwagon, you go, right, and you read the books and you watch the films and you go, right, it's all about kind of the hustle and stuff.
Yes.
And I think it's just a point of maturity where you go, well, that stuff, it sells and it's entertaining, but it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I've been on a bit of a journey over a period of time where I've learned what works and what doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned all kinds of stuff to try and manipulate people into doing what I want them to do.
Well, that's what people think sales is like a manipulation tactic, really, isn't it?
And it worked in the 1980s and 1990s, but it doesn't work in today's world, because people have got information where, when I started, people didn't have the information because there wasn't the internet, or certainly it wasn't available. And I truly believe that a job of a salesperson now is not to push people into doing something that's probably not for their best interest. It's to help and to guide them to find a solution that's going to add value to themselves and their business, which is why I love working with entrepreneurs, because nobody starts a business to be flogging stuff.
Yeah.
They start a business because they're passionate about the thing that they do and the people that they help.
Yeah. Or if they do start to flog things, they don't last very long.
Yeah, and we've obviously talked about this on the phone. I have worked in that kind of boiler room environment.
That's coming up.
That's coming up later. Okay. So, and again, I think it just goes in terms of my internal values. I've made decent money in my life. It's like I've won some and I've lost some.
That's part of the game you play, isn't it?
It is. But I don't want to be, and this is kind of morbid, but I don't want to be on my deathbed going, do you know what, I've made £1 million worth of sales. I want to be like, I've helped people.
Yeah.
And that's really aligned to my values. And the good news is you don't have to be a pushy arsehole to be successful at selling.
Well, you told me a story we just talked about a story downstairs of you buying a Hoover.
Yeah. So yes, I was.
Where you were like, fuck's sake, bitch. Well, literally like that. That's just my version of that.
Long story short, I was looking to buy a vacuum cleaner, and the salesperson was pushing this shark Hoover onto us. And she kept going, but it's got anti-hair tangle wrap technology. And I was like, are you being serious? I've got no hair. And she went, I know. And I said, it's 170 quid. And I was like, what, for a vacuum cleaner? Yeah, but it's got, anti-tangle hair technology. And I was like, I've got no hair.
And you're like, I'm not growing it back anytime soon, woman.
It was funny that this kind of mentality,
like get the sale.
And we have this term which we talk about, and people have it, which is commission breath. And people can smell commission breath. They really can, which is, I'm not doing it because it's going to help you. It's because I'm trying to get my money out of my commission. And people are more sensitive to that now. And I've done dodgy sales, and you walk away going, I've done a bad thing for somebody. Just to make 100 quid or 200 quid, it's not worth selling your soul. So kind of my ethos is I want to help people get comfortable at selling, but not sell their soul.
Yes. Yeah. No, all of that. So you mentioned just before you had that boiler, what do you call it? Boiler room?
Boiler room.
Yeah. I would describe it as the Wolf of Wall Street experience. Somewhat. Yes. The toned down version. So obviously, tell as much as you can about that, because I think it's just a funny story.
Well,
which not many people will believe, though, which is funny.
A lot of people who are have watched The Wolf of Wall Street, you can kind of understand that kind of mentality, which is that manipulation, that kind of... And actually, what the story doesn't tell you is Jordan Belford wasn't the greatest salesperson in the world. He'll tell everybody that he was.
Yeah.
What he did is he had a really good product, which was selling cheap stocks on the back of more expensive stocks. So he'd build trust with things like selling Disney and their equivalent of BT. And then when customers were kind of bought into it, then he'd sell them the crap stuff.
Yeah.
That, would bottom out, but he'd sell shares that were probably worth $1. He'd sell them for $10. And that's how he made his money.
Yeah.
It wasn't his
Penny
sales.
stocks on it,
It wasn't his sales. So people think that's kind of in a movie, and it doesn't really exist. But in the 80s and 90s, certainly in the UK, boiler rooms, which is stuffing as many people into a room as possible and getting them on the phones, and it still exists today. So for a good period of time, I worked within a boiler room in the northeast, selling broker services, if you like, and it was literally Monday to Friday on the phones, but they had all of the excesses that you would see in the movies, which I don't know if you want to talk about.
Go for it. As much detail as you can give. People love this shit.
So
shit.
It was brown envelope Fridays.
Yeah.
So people used to get thousands of pounds stuffed into their pockets for hitting sales targets, but obviously it was off the record. There was, I remember one time they closed the whole floor and had Mario Kart races. So they hired, I don't know where they got them from, go-karts, and they were driving round in a circle and having laps, and then it was a case of the person who was the quickest won £1,000 and stuff like that. It was mental. They had dwarf tossing. They hired dwarfs in, and they threw them. And it was part of it was it's hard. It's really hard to pick up the phone and get told to piss off 100 times a day.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard. So the reason why you go through that pain is because the outcome and the opportunity to make big amounts of money is there. So the motivation is you can make a lot of money if you do the hard yards.
Yeah.
And that was kind of there for people. But because it is a hard job, they tried to lighten it up with some
fun and drugs and fucking money. Yeah.
Well, again, this is quite well known within sales circles. Cocaine is a massive problem with it. And in the boiler rooms that I worked at, it was prevalent. It was clear that people were walking in at 9 o'clock in the morning, like, oh, I'm just going to go to the toilet, and then half an hour later, like, hi, how you doing? Are you all right?
Just going to go powder my nose. Yeah.
And it was literally, like that.
Brilliant.
I remember going out for a Christmas party, actually, and the sales director was like, GP. I was like, what is it? I was like, do you want a bifter? I was like, what? He was like, do you want a key? And I was like, what are you talking about, mate? He was like, he pulled out. It was like, and again, I'm not kind of down with it.
Was it like that scene from Scarface where he's just got the pile on his desk?
It was massive. And you're like, bloody hell, mate, you're at a Christmas party and you're going around offering people, you're supposed to be the leader within this business.
This is leadership style, man. Get everyone fucking
and
high
it
as
was
a
just
kite.
like, well, again, other places that I've worked, I've known sales leaders get people addicted to coke because you're on the hook.
Well, like intentionally?
Intentionally.
Wow. Also, because I guess then if they are reliant on that, they're going to work more because they need the money to pay for the house. Wow.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Get them into a lot of bother with dealers to make sure that they had to then hit their commissions to pay the dealer off.
Jesus. That's fucking dark.
Another place, it wasn't necessarily
the same place.
But they used to have once a month Fun Day Friday where they'd lock the door, they'd hire strippers and put strippers upstairs, and then just literally, that was the Scarface.
Nice. So does that mean you're admitting live on air that you've snorted cocaine off a prostitute's titties? Or is it?
No. I wish I was that interested. And again, for me, that kind of went against my values. Yeah, it was very much a case.
Well, that's what we're going to do after we finish this episode. So. That's
all right. Okay. No.
Pop that cherry for you, bro. It's fine.
So it was very much a case of it goes on, and there's a lot of when you give, and I don't mean this to sound derogatory.
Yeah.
Working class kids a lot of money.
Yes.
In a wanna, and they haven't really been told on how to use it or spend it. They go off the rails a little bit, and narcotics do come into it. You know, there's a mentality, I suppose, where I'm a big Charlie now. I can do whatever I want, and I can drive around in, big expensive cars, and it's intoxicating, that environment. But the one thing that is missing is it's very self-serving.
Mm-hmm.
I am taking money from you, and I'm having a great lifestyle, but actually you're not helping the customer. And ultimately, that's what you should be doing. It should be helping the customer, not just be flogging your wares to make your life better or make your boss another multimillionaire.
Yeah. What do you think it is about that sort of lifestyle of the Jordan Belforts, the Grant Cardones? Like, what do you think it is about that sort of mentality that really attracts, I suppose, specifically young men? What do you think it is that really attracts them to that?
There is a bit of macho and ego that goes alongside that. But I think it's an escape. And if you look at, I was talking about this morning, about gangster rap in the 80s and 90s. It gave people in the ghettos an opportunity to get out.
Yes.
And, make a life for themselves. And I think in terms of drug dealing, it kind of can, and it does give people a way to get out of their, poor existence and make a lot of money. And I think there's also that opportunity with certain sales roles where you can be uneducated or be, in my case, dyslexic, or, where you're not academic.
Mm-hmm.
And the kind of narrative I was taught when I was a kid was you go to school, you work hard, you go to university, and then you've made it.
Yes.
But for the thickos like myself who didn't go to university, well, how do I make a lot of money?
Yeah.
How do I succeed? Do I end up working, and this is not to be derogatory to anybody who works in a shop, but do I just end up working in retail for the rest of my life?
Yeah.
Or do I aspire to be something better? So there is this kind of mentality of, if you believe you can achieve and you can, you don't have to be stuck in mediocrity for the rest of your life. You have an opportunity to break free of that, and we can pay you a lot of money, but you have to graft and you have to work hard, and you've got to play by our rules. And that's intoxicating, because who wouldn't, like myself, at the age of 21, 22, want to be earning £6,000-7,000 a month?
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of people that I've known and worked with earn 3 times, 4 times what their parents do.
Yeah.
And it is a draw. And you're going into a mature environment where it's like you do as you're told, you come in, you dress smart, and if you don't play it, you get sacked. And we play hard, we work hard, or work hard, play hard, and it's all about aggressive, beating your chest. One of the it was. I remember where one of the places that I worked at, this was the CEO of the business. In the floor, there was about 200 people on this floor, and he'd had a disagreement with a supplier or something, and he literally stood on top of the table, shouting and screaming at this supplier. And everybody just put the phones down and looked up, and he was like, "How dare you talk to me like that? Do you know who I am?" Just super aggressive.
Yeah.
And then he got off the phone and went, "See, I don't take shit from anybody." And I think in a roundabout way in his mind, he was like, "I'm showing people that you've got to be the boss."
Yeah.
And, when you're on the phone to customers, you're in charge and all of that stuff. But he just came across as a bit of a dick.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that day. But it's that kind of high, aggressive nature that
testosterone environment.
Yeah.
No. So I really want to talk about the insights discovery that you sort of, I guess, practice, teach, mentor to people. So in terms of it, it's a test based on the works of Carl Jung. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's to better understand yourself a little bit, I guess. So explain, because obviously I looked at this up. We've had conversations about it, and obviously I heard you talk about it, and I was like, holy shit, this is really fascinating. So explain what it is and why you got into that.
Well, I think the reason I got into it is because it helped my sales performance.
That's
basically, and I was kind of evangelizing about it for years, to some very strange looks at times, because we were like, "What do you mean? You want to talk about personalities? Not just going to follow the script?"
I want to talk about colours.
So, as I was kind of saying downstairs, it's not necessarily about personality, it's about understanding behaviours. And I think the most amount of money that is spent on this planet on training is around leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, by sales. It's because it's the biggest gap. People aren't very good at leading, and people aren't very good at sales naturally. Yeah. But there's a thing that happens before you become a good leader, and ultimately an ethical and good salesperson, which is I need to understand myself and I need to understand people.
Yes.
So how can I be a good leader if I don't understand how people tick?
Makes sense.
It makes sense. Yeah. How can I sell to people if I don't know what they want?
Yeah.
So
all the best leaders in history understood their people, and like all the best kings, they understood what the people. I mean, some of them just didn't give a fuck, but you know what I mean. They understood the rules of the people.
We can get into that kind of power corrupts as well. That's what I've kind of just been saying. But in terms of why it's useful, is if you want to be a good salesperson, good leader, good person, sometimes you just need to examine yourself.
Yeah.
So, as a trainer, I'm not necessarily want to go into delving into somebody's subconscious and conscious, and I don't necessarily think it's about you as the individual. Once you understand yourself, you understand other people much better.
Yes. Which,
from a point of human connection, that's what it's about. And who wouldn't want to have the ability to connect with other humans easier, better, get better results and whatnot. So that's kind of the basis of what I teach. Mm-hmm. Because when you sell to somebody, you're typically selling your preferred style. When you lead, you typically lead in how you like to be led, but not everybody's like you.
Yeah.
And again, I say it so many times with leaders and salespeople and other people that I work with, just their inability to interact with other people. Mm-hmm. And I truly do believe that 80% of anybody's success in life is how you interact with other people. We're social creatures.
Yeah.
So that's why it fascinates us, and that's why I kind of look into it.
Yeah, it's interesting about the leadership, because when I first started the videos, it was just me and my friend Carl. Mm-hmm. It was just me and him that did it. It's sort of his idea, I think, really, and then I just kind of was like, oh, I really like this, I'm going to kind of take over. I had the more dominant personality of that, so I was like, right, we need to do this, this, and this. And then I was like, well, I really want a team of people. I really want some other people to join. So we had George, we had Lucy, and it was and then suddenly I was in charge of this video schedule when people would record, and then I'm like trying to convince them to do things and talk a certain way and stuff. And that was my first sort of taste of leadership, because I was never a manager in any role. I was never like a big bollock in school, I never led a gang of kids or anything like that, And I found it really hard at first, because I was like, oh, why aren't you just doing what I'm doing? Why can't you just have that same thing? And it just wasn't the case. So I had to really adapt and be like, okay, Lucy prefers this way, George prefers this way, Carl prefers it. And I had to really like spin a lot of plates almost to try and be the leader that they all needed, but that also got stuff done. So it's a very difficult line to walk, really.
Leadership is a funny one, and I've been very, very lucky. I've got a very good friend of mine, Richard Nugent, bit of a name check. He's like number one guy in terms of leadership development, I think, certainly in the UK. Yeah. He's brilliant. And so I've pinched this directly from him. He says, you can't be a leader unless you've got followers.
Good point.
And your job is to look after the people who are under your wing. Mm-hmm. Too many people get promoted who are now a boss. Mm-hmm. But the people who work for them aren't following them. They're not setting the vision and they're setting where they're going. They just have people who work for them.
Well, have you seen that I think it's a classic self-help picture. It's got the boss versus the leader. And it's like the boss is being carried in the chair at the back of the crowd and pointing forward, and everyone's like pulling him. Whereas the leader's at the front telling everyone to like pull with me kind of thing. It's
well, again, this is just my personal view. millions and billions of pounds and dollars have been spent on leadership training. And it's based on this view that to be a leader, you need to be inspirational and motivational, and you do. You absolutely do. But there's a bit in the middle that is missing. It's how to manage people. And managing people's process. I can't lead somebody out of being sick all of the time. I need to have a process to turn around and say, if you're sick this amount of times, we'll have a conversation. If you constantly come to work and you're 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour late every day, we're going to have a conversation. That's not leading, it's being, you've got it. So I think there's that, for me, you've got to be an operator, you've also got to be a manager, and you've also got to be a leader. Too many people and too much leadership training jumps from you're an operator to a leader. And nobody teaches people how to be a manager. Which is how to do interviews, how to do one-to-ones, how to coach, how to go, this is how you have an inspiring vision and lead people. Well, if you don't know how to do the paperwork, you can't.
Well, to the leadership styles, the colours of the Insights Discovery. So talk to me about the colours and as basic detail as you can to start with, just so people get the basics of this. Because this is where people are really going to be like, okay, this is where I'm going to learn a little bit about my personality. So.
So going way back, Sigmund Freud had some wonderful views on why people behave the way that they do. Interesting theories about men and their mothers. I'm not going to kind of get into that.
We don't need to go down that road, JP. It's fine.
But his philosophy was that we are typically, our personalities are derived and our behaviours are derived by the environment which we grow into. And there is an element of that. There's a lot of that which is actually true. But also, a student of Sigmund Freud, which was Carl Jung, he believed that it wasn't just our environment that dictated to how we behave. And he believed that there was a natural order to things. So we're given some of our gifts naturally. And this argument's still kind of bubbling under with psychologists, which is that nature nurture. And I think really there's a little bit of both between the two.
I would agree.
Your environment is going to have an impact on your personality. But if you think of two brothers, they might grow up in the same environment, but they will be very different characters.
I mean, I took my brother to a Carl, who I mentioned before, his gig, and my brother met Carl's parents for the first time, and she's like, and his mum was like, I've just realised that's your brother, you like chalk and cheese, and I was like, yep, very different.
It is. So Carl Jung, in simplistic terms, looked really into the human psyche and ego, and had some philosophies, and I think you've got to kind of look at it as philosophies. The more that you start looking into neuroscience, there is obviously some difference from what he thought of, because they didn't have the science to go into the brain at that time.
This is very basic levels,
But he came up with the level that our behaviours are done through three functions. The first function is how we see the world, or how we interact with the world.
Our perception, would that be?
It is our perception. And our perception is based on how we sense, or how we... So he called the function sensing and intuition. Some people are very, very good at getting that kind of gut feeling.
Like intuition,
It is. And then the sensation is based on your senses. So sight, hearing, taste. And some people kind of, even if you look at NLP, it's the VAC or VACOG, which is visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Or gustatory, which is just taste and smell. And the way that we perceive the world in sensation base is how we've perceived it in the past. So that I've seen that to be a cloud, so that must be another cloud. The example I always give with this is modern art. You could go to the Lang Art Gallery or the Baltic or anything like that and have a look at a white piece of paper with a black square in the middle. Somebody who's sensational go, well, that's a black square in the middle, because that's what they see. They see a black square, and in the past that's been a black square, and it always will be a black square. Somebody who's more intuitive will look at that data, which is what it is, and they'll go, that artist is depressed.
Mm-hmm.
They're in a black hole. They can't get out of it. They feel trapped.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who's got lots of sensation will go, what the hell are you talking about? It's a black brown and white piece of paper. Another
Sounds
person,
like me.
another person will look at that modern art and they'll look at it and go, I'm taking that data and I'm interpreting it on what I feel it's telling me.
Is it applying meaning to almost nothing, almost in that sort of sense?
What do you mean?
Like, is it like looking for meaning that maybe isn't there? Because I could paint that, put it up. Like, have you seen that one where it's like the banana taped to the tapestry or something like that? It's just a white tapestry with a banana taped to it, and everyone's like trying to find deep meaning in it. And it's like,
but that's
is it not just a banana? You know what I mean? This is like
no, but that's your language.
Yeah, that's what I mean though. Yeah.
So you're saying other people are because they don't see what you see, they're then potentially wrong.
No, do you know what?
They have a different perception of that.
I'm of the mind because I went to the Vatican last year, and I'm like looking at all these paintings, which are fabulous, and I recommend anyone go. There's fucking thousands of them, and I was like trying to look at each one and be like, what does this mean? Because I'm aware that I'm just like, cool, that's some dude burning on a cross, epic, you know what I mean? But I'm like, I'm trying to think, why was this painted? Who painted? What was the do you know what I mean? I'm trying to think a little bit more behind it sometimes.
Again, I'm not an art aficionado in any way, shape or form. I think there was a revolution where it was they didn't have photographs, so I'm trying to represent what actually happened, which was more sensation based, and then towards kind of the later end, kind of into the modern era, it was about representing what we thought and felt, rather than trying to create, because we had photos, we didn't need photos or anything to capture the moment. Art then become more expressionary, and that's when you had the bananas and is it the Tracy Ullman where she had the messy bed and all of that stuff.
Yes.
Again, I'm not massively into art, but people who are more intuitive can take information and go, I'm going to take this and make it into something new. So people who are very inventive will look at a problem sometimes and come up with a different solution, where my personal preference is sensation based. So I'll look and go, well, what evidence has this worked before? Let's copy that.
Yeah. Following the data streams,
So how we perceive the world is dominated by how, and it's a continuum. It isn't like you're one or the other. You sit somewhere on the line. So it doesn't mean that somebody who's more sensitive driven can't be creative. They can. It's just they may have to pull on a lot more resources to be more creative.
It's not at the front of their mind to be that way.
Well, I don't think it's mind. It's kind of in the soul. If you want to kind of get,
now we're getting deep,
woo-woo kind of.
I don't mind a bit of woo-woo. I'm good with that.
But it's that kind of. You can go between the two. It's just for somebody who's really, really intuitive to then start looking at facts and figures, it might be really difficult. They can, and they might go, well, actually, it's not my preferred method. And it does kind of draw into the types of jobs and things that we end up doing. So perception is one thing. So that's one functionality. Then one of the other functions which he talks about, which everybody would have heard of, which is extroverted and introverted. So the typical thing is, if you're an extroverted person, you're outgoing, gregarious, loud, and one of the things which people misconstrue with extroversion is they see it at the extreme, which is somebody who's out there and really loud. But actually, extroversion is where we draw energy from. So if you're an extrovert, you draw energy from being around people. And if you're not around people, like going back to my story about being in a room by myself, you feel drained. Where an introvert, they will prefer their own company. They'll be quiet, they'll be more reserved, they'll be more thoughtful. It doesn't mean that somebody who has a more introverted tendency can't be social. They certainly can. But what they will probably do is they need to recharge their batteries by having a bit of me time. So an introvert is, there's nothing wrong, and I think a lot of
people do think introverts, there's something wrong with being an introvert, don't they?
Actually, I was reading something, I can't remember who put it out there. it's a study from the USA, which the majority of successful C-suite leaders are actually introverted. But they have the ability to adapt, and I think that's one of the things about this stuff is people often turn around with Myers-Briggs and Insight and DISC and all of these psychometrics and stuff, and they'll go, "Oh, you're putting people into boxes."
Yeah.
It's not about putting people into boxes. It's about making people aware so they can do something about it. Mm-hmm. So if you're an introvert, it's about understanding that sometimes you need to push yourself to be a little bit more sociable.
Yeah.
At times.
Well, when me and you spoke on the phone, you said something interesting about me because you've met me like 3-4 times, something like that, and you kind of analysed me a little bit. Mm-hmm. So do you remember what you said about me? So and how you phrased it all?
Yes. So
this is time for you to show off your skills, I guess.
I haven't went through the functions, but you're a difficult one to analyse.
Oh, I don't want to make it too easy for you, JP.
Because you have an extroverted tendencies, mm-hmm. but I think you probably draw energy from being by yourself and being thoughtful. Yeah. So what your social face as a persona is quite outgoing and direct and dominant, but actually you do need to have that recap time. Yeah. So your conscious persona, as we would call it, is extroverted. Your subconscious persona is introverted. Mm. So that has an impact on the way that you come across. You're what's known as a creative type. Mm-hmm. The most flexible, probably the easiest to get around all types of different people. And obviously I've listened to quite a few of your podcasts. You have such a range of different friends and different interests and different likes. That's because you are a social chameleon. You can adapt to most situations and most people because you have a little bit of extroversion, but also a tendency for introversion. Yeah. In terms of your perception, you're definitely towards the sensation-based, evidence-based. Show me the proof. Yeah. Rather than, and we've kind of joked about the woo-woo side of things. Yeah. Somebody who's more intuitive will probably be more towards that kind of spiritual kind of, and you'll go, where's the evidence for that kind of thing? The third function, which we haven't talked about, is how you make decisions. Mm-hmm. And you know this. People will make decisions. We always make decisions through emotion, but we have a tendency to have a higher drive. Mm-hmm. So you'll have people who make decisions through their head, and some people will make decisions through their heart, or they're more task focused or more relationship focused. Yeah. So if you think of somebody who's more task focused, they'll like to have a process or a procedure to follow. Yeah. If I do point 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I'll get point 6. Yeah. So we want to have some evidence, and so it's slight different perception, but it's very much a case of I will make a decision if all of the facts stack up. Yes. Yeah. I will make a decision upon this because it feels right, or I kind of like the person that I'm dealing with. Yeah. And one of the biggest nonsense in sales, like you'll hear, is people buy from people. Absolute nonsense. Oh, really? It's absolute nonsense. People buy from people who they like and trust, and trust comes from you're like me. Right. Okay. Yeah. So people buy from people who are like them. So there's more to that statement, basically. Yeah. It's kind of been chopped up in the middle. Yeah. Some people will buy off you even if the product isn't right, if they like you. Yeah. I won't. Well, you know the mindset behind it all. You can't be conned. Well, I have, and it's still that I'm a human, and there's ways and means to overcome certain things, even if you're aware of it. Mm-hmm. But I don't like my solicitor or the solicitor that I had when I moved house. I just trusted that they get the job done. Fair. It wasn't about the personality or if they were likable. Can you get the job done? Yes, well, I'll go with you. Now, if I had two people who could do the job, I'm then probably going to go with the person that I like more. Yeah, but it's funny that we do that. I don't go to my doctor because I like them.
Do you like your doctor? Is he a sound guy?
Well, every time I go to the doctor now, I get a different one, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
So trust is a massive thing, and trust is the emotive state.
Yeah,
it surely is. But people who are more relational will make a decision because they like the person.
Yeah.
And somebody who is more thinking focused or more task focused, they'll want to make a decision because there's some evidence behind it. So it's difficult to kind of do this without visuals and stuff.
Yeah.
But somebody who is logical, makes decisions logically, and is an extroverted person will have a quadrant. That's a red quadrant. We use colours because it's easy and it's sticky. So somebody who's a high red dominant colour will probably be quite direct, quite forthright, will love competition. They will typically want to be leaders. Don't necessarily mean that they're good leaders.
Yeah.
Because they draw energy from people and they want to be seen as knowledgeable and expert.
Yes.
So high ego with lots of red energy.
It's funny, I'm just going to make a point on that actually, because I used to, when I first started doing everything that I do, I very much wanted to be the one in the limelight. I want to be the captain of the ship. And what I realized was I was so exhausted all the time trying to be the captain of the ship. And then I got a job working he was sort of a friend of a friend, basically, but I knew of him. And I started working for him, and he was the captain. And I found during my experience working with him for like 6-7 months, how really fucking good I was at being a right hand, at being a lieutenant, not a captain. And I found that I was much more valuable to the business, to life, and I got energy from it, because I wasn't in charge of everything, but I had such a good responsibility in all these little tasks. I was so much better in that role. But a lot of people can't step back from that. That ego won't allow them to be the lieutenant when they're like, I want to be the captain, I want to be it's like when people go, I want to run my own business, and it's like, okay, good luck with that. Not everyone can be an entrepreneur, not everyone can be a business owner. It's because sometimes you are just meant to be more of a lieutenant than a captain. Yeah,
and again, it goes back to that self-awareness piece. As long as you know what your strengths are and what you're good at, that's where it kind of sits. And this is why I like this system, this process of understanding yourself, because not everybody is destined to be, Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg or whatever.
Yeah.
Some people are quite happy to be, Steve Wozniak created Apple.
Yeah.
He was the inventor. Steve Jobs was the salesman. That's the kind of crack. And it's okay as long as you're comfortable. And kind of going back to what I was saying about you draw energy by not always being the face.
Yeah. Well, here's the point, right? Did George Washington personally free America? No, he didn't. There's all these other people who were underneath him who charged the field and made a difference, right? But no one talks about those. Did Nelson Mandela do everything he did by himself? No, he didn't. There were all these other people, and people forget that they don't have to be the face. They can be a cog in part of the machine that makes something big happen, and it's not bad to be that way.
Well, again, if you think the majority of autobiographies are written by winners.
Yeah.
Nobody tells the story of the losers or the people who are kind of...
History is written by the winners.
but if you think of the old adage, it's a bit sexist nowadays, but behind every good man there's a good woman.
Yeah.
There is an element of nobody is successful by themselves.
Yeah.
So you do need to have a team of people behind you. But it's generally the person who's the face who always gets all the plaudits and everything.
The icon,
yeah. And somebody who has a high red energy loves that. The high ego, and they love being the face of it.
Well, let's go back to those colours, because obviously you just analysed me very well, and I was kind of blushing through the whole thing because I was like, this is weirdly accurate, and it's weird when someone can point out things that you thought you only knew about yourself. So in terms of the colours, where would I fit in that spectrum? Just to give people listening a bit of clarity on those.
So
obviously you said red's that leading sort of blunt mentality. Like
to be fair, if you're interested in this stuff, if you went on to Google and typed in Insights colour wheel, come up with all the different colours and kind of gives you a bit more understanding of which one it is.
Well, just talk about what mine would be, just to give people sort of like some sort of insight into that.
So, without actually have done a full profile,
that's just a general oversight, yeah.
I think
sorry.
I think you would lead in your. So you've got. Again, this is getting complicated, but
It's okay. There's people listening who are going to follow this, and other people are going to go, "What the fuck are we talking about?" But it's fine.
you've got your social mask, and then you've got your subconscious mask, as we like to call it.
Yeah.
It's basically how you act and how you react. So when you're thinking and you're conscious and you are putting on a face, which you've heard the term quite often, is you want to be coming across as quite authoritative and quite knowledgeable. So I would say that you lead with red energy.
Okay.
And your second colour would be green, which is about great one-to-one. It's almost like you make people feel comfortable enough to tell you secrets.
Right.
Guess what you do?
Yeah.
Also, you value the personal relationship above everything else. So you lead with green, your secondary colour would be... with red, and then your secondary colour would be green, which means that the two colours that aren't there present would be blue and yellow. Now, what that means is that's how you want to be perceived. You want to be seen as somebody who is knowledgeable, outgoing, the fact that you do a podcast, but also you want to show that you care.
Okay, yeah.
But if you're under...
It sounds like I'm faking it. It's all a facade. It's all bullshit.
Well, I don't want to put you on the spot.
JP, I don't give a shit about you, bro. Our relationship means nothing to me.
But actually, I think if you were to be under stress, what would then happen is you would flip, and then your introverted side would probably take over. So that's when you'd start looking at the facts and the details and the evidence, and you'd say, well, how could we do this better?
Yeah.
What are other people doing? And also then you turn around and use your dominant yellow energy, which would be, how can we get other people to help? Or somebody who is having a bad day with yellow energy that can be quite manipulative. So I think...
Like, help me, I feel shit.
Under massive stress, you drop the kind of caring side and also the kind of challenging side, and kind of want to push boundaries to where's the evidence and who can I get the help.
Yeah.
And I need help, and you kind of revert back to a different type. This is why the creative type, which is what I believe you are, is one of the hardest to analyse, because you can...
I'd say you've done pretty well, though.
You can jump around a lot, and it's great because that means you're very adaptable, but also potentially to other people it can come back, well, which one
am I getting today?
Yeah,
I've had that before, actually, and someone said maybe you're bipolar, and I was like, I don't think I am, because I don't have like that level of mood swings. Do you know what I mean?
No, I think it's just a situation sometimes that you find yourself in. Well,
it was quite good, because I used to be when I used to work in the restaurant industry. It was obviously some nights are very chill and some nights are hectic. And to be fair, that's when I first noticed how I responded to stress when everything's going to shit. And some days I would be very much in that, I guess what you would call red energy, where I was kind of like trying to handle my shit, everyone else's shit, and I was like, right, we need to do this, we need to do that, get this sorted, And then there's other times where my energy was a bit lower, and I'm just like, I need help, I'm fucking dying, you know what I mean? And I would go between the two. So I would say I was never that consistent with where I was kind of coming from. So I'd probably say you're right in terms of...
So I suppose you can look at it with energy. When your energy is high, red, green. When your energy is low, you'll be blue, yellow.
Nice. Yeah. So obviously we said before, these tests sort of put people in boxes almost. Now, one of the things I love to shit on almost is when people are doing these tests. I mean, I said to you on the phone back in...
What kind of potato are you?
Yeah! And like if you were a fruit, what would you be? And it's like the BuzzFeed quizzes and stuff back in the day, and all that stuff that you'd see on Facebook, and it's like, me mum was always doing them. Me mum and Andy were always doing these quizzes. And it was like, I used to hate that, because I'm like, it's not, you're not an orange, you're not an apple, it doesn't matter, And I hate the idea that we do these tests, say whether it's the one you work with or the Myers-Briggs or whatever, and we're like, oh, we can't act a certain way because this test said I'm in this box and I do this and I do this. So it's like, where do you draw the line between using what these tests say you are, like what you just said about me, as a crutch, like, well, I am this way, so I'm not going to do anything to change, and where is it like, okay, there's a bit of fluidity here?
Well, there's two things. With your personality type, a creative type. That typically comes across when you go through a transition.
Okay.
So it could be, I always kind of use it from simplistic terms. When somebody's started a new job,
Yeah.
or got a new partner, or moved house, or whatever it may be, and you're in a point of transition, you're trying to figure out, how does that affect me? And going back to what we're saying about the environment does change. So although I've said that you're a creative type, and I think this is where your colours are at this minute in time, that will change.
Because I wouldn't agree with that statement that you said about me 10 years ago. I wouldn't have, that wouldn't have been me,
You're going through it. We all go through transitional stages throughout our life, and we do. So this is why I think, when I was a bachelor by myself, I was very selfish, and it was all about me, and I was a high red. And if you look at the profile that I had done initially, I was a high red. All my other colours were very small. But I've got a daughter now, and I'm not responsible just for me anymore.
Yeah.
And I certainly believe that has changed me, and I think parenthood does change you. Getting a new job, so things that have a positive impact on your life have an impact on your personality. Traumatic experiences, of course, so as we go through life, we will change. That's why putting somebody in a box and saying that's who you are forevermore, it's wrong. But also, people who, and I've talked about high red a lot, let's say somebody who's got high blue. I'm an introverted person who's a bit of a scientist, a bit of a geek, and I don't like, talking to people. And I'm kind of characterising that type of colour. That's who I am, that's who I need to be. Everybody else can just sod off, and I'm just... that's not the point.
Yeah.
The point of it is if you want to be successful in life, or you want to communicate with people better, you need to work with other people who aren't like you. So the learning is you need to adapt your style, your communication, to effectively get on with other people more. So it's not about, this is who I am, you like it or lump it, you have to come to me. Is I understand where I'm strong and where I'm weak, and I need to work on my weakness areas. So if I am an introverted person, I need to be a little bit more outgoing. I do need to, lots of people who are introverted hate networking.
Yeah.
The only way to get good at networking is network.
Yeah.
And speak to people. If you're an extroverted person who loves networking, the key learning is shut up. Let somebody else have a chance to talk.
Well, you said something interesting about when you go to these events, what you do, because I can say it for you if you don't remember what I'm talking about.
No, I do.
Yeah. So what's your way that you socialise at these events?
I think...
Because it was interesting
when it comes to charisma, it's not about you. Yeah. It's about them. So typically when you're in that work event, somebody goes, so what do you do? And I'll say, I'm a sales trainer, but I'm interested to find out, what about you? What is it you do? Yeah. And I flip it very quickly, so I'm talking about them. It's not about me. And the old adage is, what's the favourite radio station that people tune into? It's, WIIFM. It's what's in it for me.
Yeah.
People are really only interested in themselves.
Yeah, everyone's favourite topic is themselves.
Yeah.
Why do you think I do a podcast, bro? I just ask people about themselves to get them to talk for 2 hours.
I think it was Dale Carnegie who said that the sweetest word from anybody's lips is somebody's name. So everybody loves to hear their own name.
Yeah.
Let's not get into that discussion. But
it's not that type of show.
It's not that type of show. So when you are it's about understanding other people and talk people. If you're at a party and you ask enough questions about other people, they'll walk away and go, "Who's that guy who's really interesting?" And you haven't said anything about yourself.
Yes, that's exactly. I was just gonna say, because I've had multiple. I used to go out into Newcastle on the nights out, and 4 nights a week or something. So, and you bump into the same sort of people. And I did the same as you, where you'd bump into some guy or whatever, and you'd be like, "Oh, hello, mate, how you doing?" And you do a shot together, and then you talk about stuff. And I just used to be like, "Oh, so what do you do? What's your interest?" Not in straight up, what do you do? What do you? But it would come in a roundabout way, and I would just shut the fuck up about me for 20 minutes by the bar. I'd see them a week later, and it was "Oh, it's you!" And they loved it. And I was like, you know nothing about me, bro, but I know everything about you. But they felt that connection because I just let them ramble about their life. was great.
Well, it's the same. You know, I do create a lot of probably antiquated nowadays. I don't care. Sales techniques with going out on the pull. You know, back in the day, you go out to try and pull.
Well, it is communication at the end of the day, isn't it? So.
It is. And there is a lot of kind of thought behind chat up lines. Mm-hmm. And people turn around.
What was your favourite?
Oh, yeah.
Are you from Tennessee? Because you're the only 10 I see, JP.
No. It's the old ones. There's 10 pence, call your mother, you're pulled, and all of that stuff.
You can't use that anymore. Everyone's got mobile phones now.
Yeah, I can't tell you.
He's not going to give us... You're the charisma master. You can keep it to yourself. That's fine. But you are right, though, because one thing that... Because I used to... The coach I mentioned before I used to work for, it was a dating agency, and not an agency, it was a dating company, and we used to teach the guys how to... I mean, I didn't, but he used to teach guys how to, like, communicate properly, effectively, so they could go on dates, because these were a bunch of introverted dudes who just didn't know how to communicate with not just men, but women as well. You know, they didn't have anything there. And... one of the things that we caught them doing was they would instantly try and sell themselves. So it was like, I have a flash car, I have this watch, I have this job. And they would ask nothing about the other person, they would just try and sell themselves. And it was like, they were going in thinking, if I don't impress this person, then it's like, it's not going to work. But it's like they were going in with a win-lose mentality, as if they were a piece of shit if they didn't impress them. And it was like, no, if you go into an interaction thinking, I want to know what's interesting about this person. I want to know if we'd be a good fit together. It's a win-win. You give them good feelings. You're not trying to take the vibes. Like, give me validation, give me validation, give me validation. It was like, go into any social interaction, whether you're trying to chat up someone, whether you're going to a business thing, with a win-win mentality. It's like, it's a win for both of us, this conversation.
And I think that's, if you kind of relate to the sales, that's what happens to a lot of salespeople. Yeah,
because if you don't believe in what you're selling either, or you think they're not going to buy this, it's terrible, like, I've just got to do my job, okay, do you want to buy this? No, okay, and walk off to the
what do people do when they try to sell? Well, the biggest or the best or the greatest of this, that, the other. They try to big themselves up, and I do think a chat-up line is a great icebreaker, and I think it's a good way to start a conversation, because it gets somebody to stop what they're doing. It's known as a pattern interrupt. So I don't, it does work, but it's a bit cheesy. But the best bit of advice I was ever told by my older cousin was like, well, how do you chat lasses up? He went, just go up with them and talk to them about them. Yeah. Just ask them about them. It's the easiest way to start a conversation, talk about them. Yeah. And it's that's what it is. It's just, if you want to come across as charismatic or friendly or personable, try to take the objective off the table. Yeah. Just go and have conversation. There's no agenda. Yeah. Just go and have a conversation with somebody, and you might meet somebody that you have a bit of a spark with, and if not, you've had a nice conversation with a stranger, and that's the best way to have it. But because a lot of people are focused on the outcome, they put too much pressure on themselves.
Well, here's a good way that I used to love it. I was always used to think of every social interaction as a roller coaster. People want every interaction that they have, whether it's with a guy or a girl, to just keep going up and up and get better and better, right? One of my favorite things to do is just completely break rapport with someone. So, say for example, I mean, what's your favorite film?
Lost Boys.
So I'm like, you know what, I was never a fan. Whereas most people normally go, if you're chatting up
someone... Well, you'd be wrong.
No, I like the film. I'm just saying, like most people would go up and be like, oh, I love the Lost Boys. They really overplay their hand. It's like, if you break the rapport, it's like, it's a drop in the interaction. And then you'll be like, well, what do you mean you don't fucking like Lost Boys? What are you talking about? But it's like, if you're up, down, it's more memorable than if it was just keep going up. Do you know what I mean?
I think this is where I kind of fall out with techniques and strategies and all of that stuff. Just be a human, connecting with another human.
But that is a human thing to do. But the problem is, most people are so fearful of being judged and for what they actually like, they will just go along with everything, because it's like, I don't want to upset this other person or be rejected or something.
It's a self-preservation thing, because and I know that you're into behavioural and evolution behavioural science. If you were rejected by your tribe and you were kicked out, you'd die.
But do you know, women don't tend to understand this very much, right? But men have a really big fear, for most men anyway, of... Like, it's like approach anxiety. We get very anxious when we're talking to a girl for the first time, which women do feel, but I think men definitely feel it more. And I think apparently the evolutionary reason for that is, if you, like, for men, it's all about the hierarchy. It's all about, like, you don't want to be at the bottom of the barrel. right? And if you embarrass yourself in front of, I mean, what, a tribe of, say, 100 people, if you embarrass it, everyone's going to fucking know about this. In reality, in modern day, no one's going to fucking know if a girl said no to you. But in your evolutionary mind, you're going, if I fuck this up, everyone's going to know. And it's like clammy palms, the voice goes higher. It's like, it's a fear.
Well, it is. It's a fear. And somebody said this the other day, and I never ever thought of it this way before. One of the biggest fears that people have is public speaking.
Yeah.
And it's because one of the biggest fears that we all have is failure.
Yeah.
And public speaking is you fail in public.
Yeah.
Which is the worst. And it goes up with approaching a woman or approaching a prospect or just starting a conversation with somebody at a networking event is I've got to say something clever so this person doesn't reject us. There's a fear element.
Yeah.
And that fear creates a behaviour.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Because rejection hurts and we don't want to hurt. So we'll do avoidance. I've been there, I'm sure most blokes have been there at some point in time, seeing an attractive lady and they go, I really want to talk to them. Mm-hmm. And then you spend 30 minutes convincing yourself why you're not good enough. And then you don't talk to them.
I got kicked in the head once for talking to a woman.
Really?
So I'll tell you this. So it was completely accidental, and it was like it was just wrong place, wrong time kind of thing. So I was walking through. Oh God, I was probably 19 or something at the time. I was really young, and I had a good night with my friends, and we're walking down, big market in town. So I'm walking down there, and there was I think she was a blonde girl sat on they used to have benches at the time, big market, before it all got done out, and she just sat on her phone with her head down. And I thought, I'm gonna go and say hello, and I'm having a good night. I'll just go and say hello. So as I walk over, like, she clocks me coming over, and she looks up from her phone, and I couldn't see from that distance, but she was teary-eyed, and I mean, like, she'd been crying for a while, and she just saw me coming, and before I'd even said anything, just went fuck off, like, really loud. And I was like, okay, no worries, have a good night, and like walked back to my friends. But this guy up the street had obviously heard this interaction and seen me backing off and thought, I'm gonna fucking white knight this shit. So he ran down, and he had obviously big markets on a slant, but my mate at the time, Nathan, he was like 6 foot something, and he used my friend's shoulder to, like, this is some fucking Bruce Lee shit, and he ran and used my mate's shoulder to push off and 2-footed me in the back of the head like some judo master. And he caught me on the back of the ear. And she saw this girl, and she gets up and she's like, no, it's fine, like, it was just like, like, explain it to him, and I'm just like, the fuck just happened to my ear, I had to speak to the police and everything, but I was just like, honestly, just leave it. But it was just like, I can't believe that happened to me. Well, I've never had anything like that happen, because I'm not someone that's going to go out of their way to make someone uncomfortable or anything. Like, it's very big for me in any interaction to make like you said before, to make someone feel comfortable.
Yeah, like, when I think alcohol and drugs are a mix, people do all kinds of wonderful and crazy things, don't they? Not saying that you were doing, but obviously
like turn into fucking Bruce Lee. Jesus Christ! I mean, it's an impressive kick to do.
But it is. I think one of the interesting things about, and I've got no scientific evidence for this, but I came across this idea within a book called "Surrounded by Idiots."
Okay.
It's around insights, colours, and stuff. Yeah. And he says actually what happens is when our inhibitions drop, we flip. So if I'm a high extrovert, when I'm drunk, I'm going to be an introvert, which is why you see all of these people who are like, all that kind of at the start of the night, and then they're crying in the speaker at the end of the night. And then you've also got your IT guys who never speak to anybody at the Christmas party. And at the Christmas party, when they've had a few drinks, they're the ones who've got the tops off of the ties on there. Go,
yeah.
So there's a bit of flip into personality, certainly when we lose our inhibitions, so to speak. But yeah, it's funny, but I think when it comes to approach anxiety, it's one of them things which is we think that we're going to do it wrong, so we talk ourselves out of doing it. And at the end of the day, it's having a conversation with people, and we're naturally built for that. But it's this sense of in our brains which, if we are rejected, we'll be thrown out of the tribe. Therefore, I will not put myself at risk by being rejected. And we all know that people who are successful in life have to fail to succeed. But there's a thing which I'm going to talk about next week, which is people think that success and failure is on a continuum. Failure's over here, success is over here. I've got to move towards success, and I need to stay away from failure. You'll know this with the gym. You don't get big muscles without failure.
Yeah.
You've got to go through failure. You've got to go through no to get to the result.
Yeah.
But too many people don't want to go through the negative connotations of failing, so they never succeed.
You fail your way to success. So
you have to.
Yeah, you've got to take risks on anything. I mean, even just to go back to the dating thing, have you heard of the MGTOW movement?
No.
So it's very strange movement. So it's basically a bunch of guys who don't like modern day women, and MGTOW is MGTOW, which is men going their own way.
All right,
it's a bunch of men that swear off women all together. It's fucking crazy. It's just, but do you know what it's a fear of the rejection. So I'm not even going to try because women are horrible and all this. And it's just like this is where we're at in today's society.
Well, I think I'm going to be an old fuddy-duddy here. I do think with young guys now, it's so hard because a lot of the stuff that they have keeps them away from being out in society. So a lot of people are trapped in their house. Not trapped in the house, but I think they do it of their own volition. Sitting there playing video games and watching stuff on the internet, and a lot of porn addiction and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So they don't really need to go out and meet people.
Tinder, Bumble, Hinge,
yeah,
you've got all that on your phone, yeah.
That social muscle, and it is a muscle at the end of the day, isn't really built up. So then when they get rejected, they've never been rejected before, and it's the end of the world. And I see this with women as well. In terms of they can't deal with rejection. So therefore it's easier to go into their shell and just go, well, everybody's a twat and, they're bad and I'm safe in my environment.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous place to go because, population is dropping and all of that kind of stuff. People need to go out and be a bit more social. Yeah. And I think the pandemic hasn't really helped because it's been very easy to sit in the house and not go out. And
mate, when people came out of lockdown, I was still obviously at the restaurant, and people came out, and everyone had fucking forgot how to be polite. Everyone was just a dick when they came out for food, and I'm like, how have you? I mean, fair enough. How long were we in the first lockdown for when everything shut? Do you remember?
I think it was about 3 months.
Yeah, something like that.
But it felt like 2 years.
Yeah, and everyone came back out when restaurants opened, and it was just everyone in those few months had just forgotten how to be nice and sociable, and I was like really genuinely taken aback by everyone. And not everyone, some people were still nice, but everyone was just like demanding, wanted it now. Like it was just like, whoa, you know, that's after 3 months. Imagine if just people swore off it altogether. But it is hard to meet. Like I have a big problem. Not meeting friends and making friends. I have problems maintaining friends sometimes. Like, because I get lost in a lot of work. I get lost in a lot of, like the weeks fly by. And I'm really disorganized with my friendship groups. But I know that's a flaw in me. But I don't have a problem, like, making friends anymore, if that makes sense. But
I think also you're on a different journey than a lot of people. It's called the Above Average Podcast for a reason. One of the things which I've found over the last couple of months, really, I suppose, or 2 years since I became an entrepreneur, is you've got to surround yourself with people who are on the same journey as you. Yeah. And a lot of my friends, and I love them to bits, they're not. They're quite happy working a 9-to-5 job and all of that stuff. So you'll always have friendships and people that you get on with, but I think you do adapt and you do change as you grow. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with having transient relationships with people, because as you grow, they may not, and they may be in the same situation. I've got friends who've got the same job. I was on LinkedIn before, and I was like, I've been in this job for 15 years, and I think that's sad. I do. I think it's sad. You haven't done anything different. You went to the same place, and you met the same people for the last 15 years and done the same thing. How boring is that?
I think with adding that into the personalities, everyone, like the fact that we all have different personalities, identities, is good for society because we need all these different people. But I also think like some people are like, well, I can't, like, if you're happy with a 9-to-5, I think that's absolutely fine. Like if you're happy with the bare minimum, that's fine. But imagine if everyone just suddenly wanted to be the bee's knees all the time. Like, it just wouldn't work as a society. So we need worker bees, we need queen bees.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We need, and as harsh as it sounds, like, I believe some people are just, they're not built for anything other than, you know.
And then that's cool.
And you're cool with that. Yeah, it works.
For me, it doesn't sit. You know, I need to have that kind of growth, and I do think that it's okay. I've worked in lots of different places, and I've met loads of really interesting people. One of my good friends, Craig, I met in my last job when I was working in the hospitality leisure industry.
Yeah.
And we haven't worked together for 3 years, and we still talk to each other at least once a month. He lives in Norfolk, and because he's on the same journey, and he's, you know, kind of
relate to that level of,
There's people that I've been out drinking with. You know, I used to play rugby, and I'd still go to the rugby club and I'd still be friendly with them. But they're not on my journey anymore, and that's okay. So, and I think probably, and I can only speak for men because I'm a man, but I think men generally are okay having relationships where they're not in each other's pockets for years.
And then kind of that's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. You can go back and see somebody you haven't seen for 3 years, and it's just like back to where it was. But I think in terms of keeping friendships, it's like anything. It's got to be a bit of work, and if you're on different paths, then it's harder and harder to.
Well, with the just tagging on the fear of rejection, like, I first started posting under the page name, I think it was like Daily Motivation or something it was called. What, I didn't have my face on it, didn't say it was made by me or whatever, because I was scared that posting motivational stuff and whatever would be, it's cringe, people aren't going to like it. And in my back of my mind, I was like, what about all the people that I went to school with and stuff? And spoken to these people for 5 years or something at this point. I'm like, why do I fear their rejection? And then when I put my face out there, you get people going, oh, it's the kid from fucking, there was a guy, bless him, all of them, shout out to Danny from TGI's, it used to, every time I came in on a shift, he'd be, oh, it's the kid from YouTube, every time, no matter where he was in the restaurant, that's that kid from YouTube. And I was like, fuck's sake. But you get, then you put your face out there and you get people saying, do you think you're better than us? Like, didn't agree with that. People don't always like what you post, and then you get that fear of like, maybe I've said something wrong, maybe I shouldn't have done that, maybe I should stop. And then you keep and then you're like, do I go back, do I go forward? Then you keep pushing, and then it's like more people like your stuff, but then also more people disagree with you, and then you've got to be like, do I step back, do I step forward? And it's like, every step of rejection, for people listening, you have to just keep pushing it a little bit more. Because then the more you do, and the more rejected you get by everyone, it stops. I think personally, for me, it stops affecting me.
It's a muscle.
Yeah,
you have to. I think I was quite lucky in a way, because before, I used to grow up before there was mobile phones, and look at this face. I used to get rejected a lot.
You're a handsome dude.
Thank you very much. Well, no, I used to get rejected a lot, and. It's okay, but if I'd only been rejected once, it's the worst thing in the world. You've got to build up that muscle, and it's that realization that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's difficult, and it kind of going on to getting your face out there and getting known. It is hard because you fear that you're going to be laughed at, or people are going to deride what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And for me, that's been something that I've learned over a period of time. Certainly, this year I'm trying to get my brand out there. I'm trying to be a bit more visible.
Yeah.
Every single thing I've put on there, people have always been really positive. But you have it in the back of your head, which is, what if somebody says something negative? And you'll always pick out, and I used to do this when I was, in the corporate world. You train 100 people, and one person go, I didn't enjoy the course.
Yeah.
And it'd kill you. And you go,
yeah.
But 99 people have said that they enjoyed the course, or they got use out of it. One person, and you were like, I'm not good enough.
That's reminded me, actually, one of my first speeches I did we did it in the Hilton Hotel, and it was just it was run by a guy called Will Polston, and they gave out afterwards cards, to feedback cards, and they send you them afterwards by email, what people liked about your thing, and everyone was like, really liked his energy, really liked this, his humor, and there was one guy I don't remember any of the nice ones, like specifically, but I remember this guy was like, didn't like how he said everyone was stuck in a rut or something like that. And that stuck with us. I was like, oh shit. But like, I was just one guy out of the whole room said it was good. And one guy. And I remember I can see it in my mind, that card.
And again, going back to personalities, if you look at insights, there is actually 72 different personality types.
Yeah.
You're not everybody's cup of tea.
No.
And that's okay.
I prefer coffee anyway.
But you're not.
That's like one of them live, laugh, love quotes from B&M that you can get for your wall. I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I prefer coffee.
Well, I like it like my men black. But it's very much a case that you're not going to make everybody happy all of the time. And you know what? I don't care. I've got a message which interacts and vibes with certain people, and that can help. It doesn't with other people, and that's okay. If somebody was to employ me as a high pressure sales trainer, I'm not for you, and that's cool.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't particularly want to go work for the boiler room type of businesses.
Yeah.
But I want to work with people who want to have a good product, who sell ethically, and that kind of fits where I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And if you're not happy with that, don't use us, and I'm cool with that. And it's taken me a long time and a bit of maturity that you can't please everybody.
No.
Again, goes back to you were saying before. You find your tribe and you work with people that you can work with. And again, going back to more of a sales analogy, you can't convince anybody to do anything.
Yeah. Well, people are always going to meet you where they're at. Because I had a guy once, he really hated on me for a while, and he would send me messages and stuff, and I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? And then he messaged me not long ago, and he was like, I was just in a bad place, and I'm sorry for everything, like, I love your stuff now. And I was like, he just met me where he was at, and he didn't relate to it at the time, and I'm just like, you know what, I've got no hard feelings for that. Like, the fact that he's came back and been like, I'm sorry, I was a dick, I'm like, fair, respect.
It a lot of times, and again, this is just through time, effort, and I suppose a bit of wisdom, and I'm not saying I'm wise in any way.
You need a bigger beard to be wise. That's what it is. Yeah. You need Gandalf,
which is very much a case of, it's a reflection of them, not you.
Yeah. And don't take it personally from someone you're not personal with.
Everybody, you used to train this out when I used to go, ugh, but feedback's a gift. You learn from it, and when somebody gives you feedback, unless they're just being a dick, it's because they're trying to help you.
Yeah. There's a way to give feedback as well.
Again, personality, just tell me straight. If I was a bit more sensitive, then I'd be like, well, the old shit sandwich, I like this. And just tell us. That's how I like to be given, but that's just my personality.
I mean, I've done 40, I think this is episode 43 of this. I've said some stupid shit. I've said stuff that probably didn't sound right or whatever, but you learn from it, and I want people to see that everyone that comes on this podcast is human and makes mistakes, trips over their words, gets something wrong. I mean, I think on the last one that I did, we were talking about, for some reason, peanuts, and we said it's not a peanut is not a nut, it's a legume or something, and I called it a loom because I totally forgot. I missed out the A and the G. I was like, it's a legume, not a loom. And you know what I mean? And I watched it back and I went, I just fucked that up completely, but you know what? It's absolutely fine.
Well, I used to, and again, going back to being dyslexic, I used to always get pelters about grammar and spelling on slides and stuff like that. And I do, and it's a term, it's grammar Nazis. I don't care. I don't get, that's the problem with you. I have done my best to put something on, to explain something, to help you. If you're going to pick fault, that's your problem, not mine.
Do you look them dead in the eye and go, I'm actually dyslexic? So
no. Because, again, I don't want to use
it as a crutch.
That as a crutch, or but it's a case of, I've made a typo.
Yeah.
Let's just move on. If you're going to hang on to the fact that I've got a wrong spelling of a word, or a little t rather than a big T, or whatever it may be, that's on you.
Yeah.
You're missing the point of what we're trying to say. If you're looking at the detail, and I understand some people are more detail focused, but I can only be me. If I'm trying to change myself all of the time, you become a bit of a maniac.
And you're exhausted as well.
You're exhausted.
I was always told, I mean, I don't know, have you seen Madagascar before? Mm-hmm. The penguins were like, smile and wave, boys, smile and wave. Yeah, that's how I was always told if someone's giving you a lot of shit and you just like Smile and wave. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think it's important to stretch yourself and meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
But not to the detriment of your own soul.
Yeah.
So when I talk about insights and we talk about being adaptable, it's only changing 5 to 10% of how you would normally communicate to adapt to the person. Not
change your whole soul and personality. Yeah.
Like if you're dealing with somebody who's a really direct and authoritative person, you become a direct and authoritative person. If you're naturally not, because you come across as false.
Yeah.
But being aware that they probably need to be a bit more, be pushed a little bit.
Yeah.
Or if somebody's a bit more sensitive, be a bit more kind of caring, a bit more gentle.
It's congruency, isn't it? It's your thoughts, words, actions are aligned. Because people sense when you're chatting something, then you don't feel like you're confident in what you're saying, or vice versa. Yeah.
I think you've got to believe in your actions have to. Sorry, your words have to match your actions, don't they?
Yeah.
And this is why, with a lot of people, we talk about chatting up or sales or whatever, leadership. They're told to do the thing, so they do the thing, but they don't believe in the thing.
Yeah.
So if you approach a lady and you don't believe in yourself, that's going to come across. If you approach a customer and you don't believe in your product, that comes across.
Yeah, you've got to believe you're worth someone's time and energy. And that's a hard thing to, I think, develop, but it comes over time of just repeated exposure, I think.
I think in terms of, again, this is why I probably don't work in the corporate world anymore. You've got to believe in what you're doing.
Yeah.
You've got to have that passion about your thing. And if you're not passionate about the thing, do it for a couple of years until you're comfortable and safe, but then ultimately follow your passion.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, being very morbid, and I'll use my mum as an example, she'll probably kill us if she ever sees this, gets to the end of life, what did you do? Well, I worked for the DWP for 25 years, and I filled people's taxes in. Is that it? I want to kind of say, look, I went out there, I've helped people, I've made a lot of money for people, I've helped them grow their business, I've had fantastic adventures, I've met some amazing, incredible people, and certainly since I've actually jumped into working for myself, I've met the most interesting, brilliant people that I would have never seen within 20 years.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And that's exciting for me in my life. And then when I look back and go, I've achieved something, I've done something useful.
Yeah.
I couldn't be in that drudgery of just doing the same thing for 20 odd years.
Well, what I always used to say to people is do things for the stories. Do things for reference experiences if you're trying to learn. If you are scared to be rejected by whether it's men, women, whoever, put yourself in those situations repeatedly. Keep exposing yourself, like exposure therapy, like keep exposing yourself to those environments, and eventually it will work. Like if you are not very sociable, be in social environments more days of the week than not. Not forever, but just put yourself in those situations and see how you react. Tweak it. Okay, I didn't enjoy this. I acted this way. Just learn from your own experiences.
If you're not doing things that scare you, you're not living.
Yeah.
I truly believe that you shouldn't put yourself into danger, ever.
Oh,
but
yeah.
If
I'm not saying go to the ghetto and scream, and then, you know what I mean? Don't do that.
If you're not in a situation where you're scaring yourself or you're putting yourself out of your comfort zone, and you have that nagging thing in the back of your head, which is, I'm not quite ready for this. Mm-hmm. That's when you need to do it. And all successful people that I know, they'll all turn around and say something along the lines of, the reason why we're successful is we pushed ourselves beyond what other people were prepared to do. And I think too many people will avoid the scary for comfort. And, you know, we both know Morty. He turns around and he always talks about comfort. He says, life is difficult and you can either go to the gym and eat healthy, which is quite hard to do, or you have the consequences of later on in life not being healthy, and that's hard to do. So it's pick your discomfort.
Pay for your health now while you can, before you have to pay for your health where you have to pay for it, you know?
Yeah, so choose your poison.
Yeah.
Do you do the hard work now, and have the benefits later on, or do you have the discomfort in later life? And it's so much about putting yourselves into situations that scare you, because it is discomfort now, but you'll have a better life. And I truly believe, after I've went on this journey of working for myself, I'm a million times better trainer than I was when I worked for a corporate entity, jumping through hoops, throwing dwarfs. All of that.
You personally fling the dwarf? Mate, I hope that video footage exists.
No comment. So I think, again, it's the above, average podcast. I think if you do want to be above average, you've got to push yourself to do things that. Well,
that's the whole point. That's why I wanted to do this, because I was always like, I want it to be. Everything all right? Yeah. So I was just, everything I wanted to do with this podcast was because I always felt like I was never the best at anything. I was always average at stuff. Everything I ever tried to do, I was always average. I was always the second or third. I was never the best. And then when I could do this podcast, and I wanted people to learn from people who had done things outside of their own comfort zones, like you like, even just you public speaking is enough to get you on this, because most people won't public speak. I've had comedians on here, doctors. I'm like, people who do things that are interesting, outside the norm, above mediocrity.
I've done comedy. I wasn't very good at it, but I've done it.
You do have I loved about the what was it? At Sam's event, it was like Lion King, and there was like a Disney theme running throughout all the. Wasn't it?
It was.
What was on yours again?
For me, it was just monkeys. Kind of to say that we are ultimately just animals, and we just have a human. Well, we have a nature, and a lot of what we do is just because we're animals.
Biological drives. Yeah.
And I just wanted to have a picture of a monkey's bum on.
Love it. I was always like, people always say to me like, humans have free will. We're not the same. I'm like, you don't have as much free will as you think you do. And they're always like, yes, I do. And I'm like, go and eat poop, or try and be attracted to the agenda that you're not attracted to. Oh, you can't do it. Oh, that's funny. You must be wired a certain way. You know what I mean? It's like, you are naturally you do not like the smell of sulfur because it's shit. That's wired into you. No one goes, shit. You know what I mean? There's probably some weirdo out there who's like, I actually enjoy the smell of my own shit. But you are wired a certain way. You don't have as much free will as you think.
No, and I think that's...
You're just like, I love the smell of sulfur, Adam. What are you talking about?
No.
My deodorant is shit.
For some bizarre reason, I just had a picture of that German manager who kept sniffing his fingers. I don't know if you ever seen that.
I've never seen that one.
Yeah, it was I can't remember what his name was, but he used to always get caught on camera sniffing his fingers.
Oh, nice.
But anyway, enough of that. As I sniff my finger.
I'm glad we're like, what were you, like an hour and a half in? I'm glad that like this is, we didn't start with that, because no, I'm not.
No, I think it again goes back to Carl Jung. We have the environment, but also we have our natural tendencies, which we have kind of built in with us.
Yeah.
And it's human nature. You can't escape part of human nature, and I know that people do try. Again, probably another podcast to talk about some other areas of what people believe and things like that. But there are certain things which are just, inbuilt with us.
Yeah. Well, there is one thing, as we wrap this episode up, but there's one thing I want to ask you about. So I think that in every guy's life, he has had to choose between telling a girl that he's a Taurus and loves astrology, or going home by himself. So in terms of astrology, because I'm not a massive fan of it, I don't put much faith into it, but where do you stand on it? Because a lot of people, obviously you said these personality tests and all these things are because people love to know more about themselves. We're obsessed with psychology. We're obsessed with knowing why we do certain things. Where do you stand on astrology?
I don't particularly believe in it myself.
Because you actually had something interesting about when you talked about the school life where you were born in the school year, which I found really interesting.
But I think also you've got to find what works, and if that works for you, then cool. I think why would anybody turn around and disparately call out your belief system? It's like religion. I think there's lots of different religions out there. If that works for you and is aiding making your life better, then crack on. If it's making your life worse, then maybe something needs to...
If you're like, well, I can't be friends with you because you're a Pisces or something, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yes, I think that's where it is. But I think in terms of... I think there is an ancient wisdom which will probably lost within the modern world.
Okay.
There's a reason why these things exist.
Yeah.
It doesn't it's like... I love Greek mythology. And they talk about how humans were created. And it's interesting, they were saying that when Zeus created mankind, it wasn't Zeus, it was a mixture of all of the different gods, and all of the different strengths were given to us, or gifts were given by a range of different gods. And then there was, they were made out of clay, which was, there was black ones, there was white ones, there was this is the terminology, I'm not being racist, please don't.
Yeah.
But there was yellow ones, and there was purple ones, and there was green ones.
Yeah.
And there was blue ones, and accidentally Zeus stood on the blue with the purple, which is why they don't exist. But the other colours, which kind of explained the different colours of people around the world, which it was a way to explain something that they didn't understand. So the signs of the zodiac was a way to explain something which was probably beyond their comprehension of that time.
Yeah.
But I do believe that when you're born has an impact on who you are. So obviously I'm a Gemini, and I was born in June. So because I'm a summer baby, I used to always look forward to summer because it was my birthday. I hate winter. I'm not saying that it's all because of my star sign, but when you're born doesn't have an impact. And again, going into the school system, I was one of the youngest. So I was pretty much 75% of behind. So if I was 5 or 4, the other person in the class might have been closer to 5, which is nearly an extra year's worth of growth.
But at that age, it's
massive. It's massive. So, of course, they're going to be seen as smarter, more athletic, bigger and stronger and all of that stuff. And I'm going to be the weakling within the group because I am physically 25% younger than they are. So I don't think the school system works effectively very well for them types of kids.
Yeah.
But, of course, that person who's older and more successful is going to take that success into, I'm good at football, and confidence. Where somebody who is a summer baby is probably going to have an impact on that. So I do think when you're born has an impact on your life experiences, and as we were talking about before, the environment that you grow into affects who you are. So I don't necessarily say because I'm a Gemini or a Pisces or bloody Libra or whatever, that's who I am.
More of them than I do.
But I do think that when you're born and the way that you're put into society has an impact. It has to.
Yeah. But not the stars aligning.
The stars aren't turning around and dictating my future.
Yeah.
But I do think when you're born, and even the Chinese have different years. They have the year of the dragon, the year that you're born also has an impact, I do believe, on and you have this with, in a simplified version with your generations. You have boomers and Gen X and millennials and alpha and all of that stuff.
Everything needs a label though now, doesn't it? You can't just be, I was born in the 90s. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just have that anymore. You're either a Gen X or millennial. But to an extent I agree. Like I like that sometimes it's easier to put things in boxes because it makes sense and it makes it easy identifiable. But at the same time, I think people just love boxes too much these days. Because
humans are complicated. And it's people spend thousands of £1,000s doing psychology degrees.
Yeah.
Because we're complicated. And most people who, and I'll be getting belted for this, come out with a psychology degree, they don't understand people any better.
Yeah, true.
Because they want to find the answer about the human condition. People find it in religion, people find it in spirituality. Humans are on, it's, why are we here? Getting really, really deep. But ultimately, I think that's why we tend to have, we find tribes.
Yeah.
And going on to online stuff, algorithms kind of put us into our tribes. It's in nature to kind of want to explain the thing. Yeah.
We all wish we had the meaning of life. What is it in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? The meaning of life is 42 or something like that. I mean, even if we're where we are now, a lot of the things I think that we talk about now are going to be laughed at in like 100, 200 years. if the planet's still standing, if our civilization hasn't crumbled. I think some of the things that we come out with, like, they'll call us uneducated. Like, we look back at, like you said, that the ancient Greeks or whatever, how they thought about things and gods and all that stuff, and we look back and go, well, you know, you were wrong there. Or Sigmund Freud was proven wrong in a lot of his hypothesis. So I think we've still got a long way to go in terms of understanding the human condition.
I love QI. I love QI. I remember one of the series he turned around and he was like, how many moons do we have? And they were like, we've got one moon. And then the alarm goes off. No, we've actually got like 7 moons or something like that. 2 series later, how many moons have we got? Alan Davis is like, we've got 7 moons. He's like, the alarm goes off. No, we've only got one. That was disproven. And it's this kind of thing is there's no such thing as an absolute truth.
Yeah.
Because everything can be disproved at some point. I think Brian Cox might argue the case because of physics, but a lot of physics has been disproven. Einstein's theories have been disproven. In time, there are some absolute truths. But
that's the good thing about doing that, though, and putting these theories out there is to be disproven. A good scientist or whoever studies psychology or whatever, you put out a theory, you test it again and again and again and again and again and again and again, and you learn from it. That's the whole point. You're not supposed to say, well, I think this, that's how it's going to be forever, and everyone just accepts it. People are going to constantly test these models and disprove them. Like, I love evolutionary psychology. It's falsifiable, but it's never been falsified. You know what I mean? It's a theory, and it makes sense, but it has yet to be disproven.
It's a way of explaining the world experience.
Yeah.
And
even Stephen Hawking was like, when they were like, what caused the Big Bang? He was like, well, your guess is as good as mine. Could be God, could be anything. You know, God is the answer when you there's nowhere else to go.
But yeah, we are getting deep. Yeah, yes. Kind of going back to what I was saying before, find out what works for you.
Yeah.
And if it's making your life better, then keep doing it.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, stop.
Yeah.
You know, and in terms of all of the stuff that we've talked about with insights or sales or leadership, you've got to go through your own discovery.
Yeah.
And find out what works for you.
Yeah.
That's really what I would kind of finish on, really.
Yeah. Well, one of my final questions for you, mate, is if I give you this, can you sell me this pen?
Jordan Belford, eat your heart out.
Just to put you on the spot.
I would always turn around and say, what do you use pens for?
I use it to write. I use it to make notes. I use it to write my podcast questions.
All right. What would you do if you didn't have a pen?
I wouldn't be able to do it.
Okay, so how mane pens do you need?
One solid good pen, probably.
All right, well, there you go. I'll put it down.
It's such a shit example, isn't it? I had it then, I was like, pen. But, my final question for you, mate, is a question that I ask all my guests, which I'm sure you've heard since you've heard this before, and you was coming. Do you consider yourself a success?
Yes. I don't want to be in that with a high ego. I'm living the life that I want to live. Could I make more money? Yes. Could I have more clients? Yes. But I'm in charge of my own destiny, and that's really exciting. And I was kind of saying before, not everybody can do that. So I do feel I could be more successful. But yeah, I think I am a success.
Nice. I agree, mate. And you know what, guys? This is the first time. I'm going to reach around here. This is the first time a guest has brought me a gift. So I want to call it out as well. I have the access to the collector's set of Dogtanian and the brand new movie based on, what was it? Anthony's podcast, wasn't it? Yeah. So thank you very much, JP.
Lovely.
I'm going to have that as the thumbnail of the video. But mate, where can people follow you? Where can people find out how to work with you? Where can people find more about you?
So I'm on all the socials, but being a little bit older, Instagram and Facebook, I kind of tend to stay away from in terms of promoting my own business. I'm quite active on LinkedIn, so LinkedIn's probably the best place to find us.
Excellent, mate. Well, thank you very much, JP, for being on, and thank you very much for Dogtanian. I'm going to go away and watch this as well. But guys, please, obviously, leave us the 5-star reviews. None of this 4-star bullshit, JP. No, it's 5 stars or nothing. And obviously, follow the podcast on every platform, whether it's on Spotify or Apple. There will be an option to do it. And as always, guys, I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.